Roadwork was right on time.
This was the beginning of a pretty big explosion of feminist music.
The name Roadwork came from a sign on the highway. We were going to be putting women's culture on the road, and it was going to be hard work. At the heart of the mission was being a multiracial coalition.
Back then, feminist music, or lesbian feminist music, was being dominated by white women. Nobody could undo that except white women taking on their own racism.
I remember going to Kennedy Street to meet Bernice Johnson Regan for a group I had never heard of, Sweet Honey and the Rock.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down.
She said, "What do you think about setting up a tour for Sweet Honey and the Rock in California?" And I said, "Sure."
I've got the light of freedom. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, shine, 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 shine.
Sister Fire emerged actually first as a fundraiser. We were existing during the Ronald Reagan years in the 80s. Arts funding was being cut. It was really a hard time. Sister Fire was different than many of the women's festivals that were going on at that time.
Sister Fire was like, let's do this in the city and let's invite everybody.
It was exciting to have an invitation to perform before basically thousands of people in this open air, huge field. There was all this sort of political activity and politicizing going on. At the same time, there was the art. For us, the art and the politics, the racial and the gender, all came together.
It was a time where there were so many issues going on nationally and globally, and we were able to be a part of that, whether it was a demonstration coming up, whether it was political action, you name it. We were using the concerts as a way of community organizing.
And it was so black, you know, like so all of the other festivals are so white, you know, so it was like beautiful.
We were dealing with class, race, age, gender, religion, AIDS, a variety of multiculturalisms, national, international, rural versus urban. We were initiating collaborations that had not been in place before. We were constantly at risk in hurting each other.
Bernice Johnson Regan wrote this article about coalition and how important it is, but coalition is not about liking everybody you work with. In fact, if you like people, you might be in the wrong place. You're not just doing it because you're in solidarity with that person. You're also doing it because you have recognized how it affects you. Today, whether you look at Movement for Black Lives, or Mi Gente, or the immigrant rights movement, or the climate change movement, or even the grassroots LGBT queer movement, the trans movement, they're all intersectional.
Roadwork was a rarity and it still is a rarity. I don't know anybody doing anything like Roadwork did.
It's important to have these structures that can hold up artists. Artists cannot do this by themselves. My hope is that somewhere there are women building the next generation's idea of roadwork.
It has to be somebody in a now generation to want it and to drive it. And people like me, people like Amy, we become like fuel and elders of the new creation.
I remember a line Bernice once said, "If you feel something is missing, it's probably the sound of your own voice." We have got to tell our story. We need toolbox to figure out how to work with each other. If ever there was a time when coalition is needed, this is the moment.
We are not sitting here waiting around for somebody else to save us, 'cause we know if we want to make a change, we gotta do it ourselves and make it last this time. Hey, and you see how